The Celestial Council had assembled 17 times in the past lunar cycle, each gathering more desperate than the last. Prince Nox of the Dragon Realms lay motionless in his crystalline chamber, scales shimmering with an ethereal blue light that pulsed weaker with each passing day. The most powerful mages in the known universe had attempted their ancient rituals, weaving spells that could reshape mountains and redirect rivers. Yet the prince remained locked in his cursed slumber. Eliana wiped the sweat from her brow as she mucked out the dragon stables. The most unglamorous job in the entire Celestial Palace. Humans weren't supposed to be here, and almost alien species considered her kind too fragile, too short-lived, too mundane to matter. But the palace needed workers willing to handle the less magical aspects of maintaining a kingdom, and humans were excellent at doing dirty work nobody else wanted. She'd heard the whispers, of course. The Dragon Prince had been cursed by a rival faction, trapped in sleep by magic so dark and complex that even the elder sorceresses couldn't unravel it. They'd tried everything: the Tears of Phoenix, the Song of Sirens, True Love's Kiss from 3 different princesses of neighboring realms. Nothing worked. Poor bastard, Eliana muttered to herself, hoisting another bucket of dragon waste. All that power and magic, and he can't even wake himself up. The head stable master, a towering centaur named Zelthor, stamped his hooves impatiently. Human, the council has requested the royal chamber be cleaned. Even in his state, the prince deserves dignity. Eliana's eyes widened. They want me to go in there, but I thought the magical wards make most beings nauseous. Your kind's immunity to magic makes you ... suitable. Zelthor's tone made it clear what he thought of that immunity. 20 minutes later, Eliana stood before the crystal chamber, bucket and mop in hand. Through the translucent walls, she could see Prince Nox's enormous form curled in what would be sleep if sleep were this deathly still. His scales, usually described in legends as brilliant sapphire, had faded to a dull grey-blue. She entered, and immediately understood why others avoided this place. The air itself felt heavy, thick with magical residue that pressed against her consciousness like static. But unlike the other species, Eliana felt no nausea, no disorientation. Magic simply slid off her the way water beaded on oiled leather. Well, she said, beginning to sweep, this is depressing. She worked in silence for a while, occasionally glancing at the enormous dragon. Up close, she could see the intricate patterns of his scales. The way his breathing, barely perceptible, caused tiny motes of light to drift from his nostrils. You know what's funny? Eliana spoke aloud, because talking to herself was a habit from years of lonely work. Everyone thinks magic is the answer to everything. Some dark curse needs a light blessing. Some evil spell needs a good counterspell. Everything's got to be symmetrical, balanced, poetic. She snorted. But sometimes things are just ... stuck, and they need a good kick. She moved closer, examining a section of floor near the prince's massive head. I bet nobody's actually tried just talking to you. Not casting, not chanting, just talking. Because you're royalty, and humans don't talk to royalty. We're supposed to bow and scrape and stay in our lane. Eliana dunked her mop in the bucket. Well, I'm terrible at staying in my lane. My mom always said I had a problem with authority. She paused. Had past tense. Humans don't live long enough for dragon princes to remember their mothers. She squeezed out the mop, and the sound echoed in the chamber. That's the thing about us, though. We don't have time for elaborate solutions. We're born, we work, we die maybe 80 years if we're lucky. So we learned to be efficient, practical. We learned that sometimes the simplest solution is the right one. Eliana approached the prince's head, looking directly at his closed eye, each lid larger than her entire body. And here's what I think. I think this curse is feeding on complexity. Every spell they throw at it just gives it more power, more magical energy to sustain itself. They're fighting fire with fire, and fire loves that. She leaned on her mop handle. But me, I'm the absence of magic. I'm the null space in their grand equation. I'm so mundane, so ordinary, that magic doesn't even recognize I exist. Eliana reached out and tapped one massive scale with her finger. The sound was like knocking on stone. So here's my professional opinion. Your Highness, you're being lazy. Nothing happened. Yeah, I said it, lazy. You're letting this curse define you. Letting all these powerful beings fuss over you while you sleep. Very princely, very dramatic. She crossed her arms. But also pathetic. Still nothing. Get up, lazy, Eliana said, her voice carrying the same tone she'd used with stubborn horses and uncooperative machinery. Not magical, not commanding, just matter-of-fact human irritation. The prince's eye snapped open. It was massive, golden, and very much awake. The pupil contracted, focusing on the tiny human standing before him. Then, with a sound like grinding boulders, Prince Nox moved. His head lifted, scales suddenly brightening from gray to brilliant blue. The crystal chamber filled with light as magical energy his own. Not the curses flooded back into his body. Ileana stumbled backward, dropping her mop. Holy, the prince shifted, and where a dragon had been, a man now stood tall, with scales still visible along his cheekbones and eyes that burned with ancient fire. He stared at Ileana with an expression somewhere between shock and amusement. Did you... His voice was rough from disuse. Did you just call me lazy? Well, technically, Ileana stammered. The elder sorceresses tried the ritual of awakening. The Archmagus himself wove the threads of consciousness. 3 princesses offered true love's kiss. Nox took a step forward, and despite his human form, Ileana could feel the predatory power radiating from him. And you called me lazy. It worked, didn't it? Ileana said, finding her courage. She was dead anyway, might as well commit. Nox laughed, and the sound was like thunder and bells. The curse fed on magic, on complexity, on grand gestures. But you... P looked at her with something like wonder. You simply refused to acknowledge its power. Your mundanity, your absolute ordinariness, cut through it like a knife through water. So... You're not going to execute me. Execute you? Nox's golden eyes gleamed. You just did what the greatest magical minds in 17 galaxies couldn't accomplish. Tell me your name. Human. Ileana. Just ... Ileana from the stables. Ileana from the stables, Nox repeated, as if tasting the words. The human who woke a dragon prince by calling him lazy. He smiled, sharp and genuine. I think the Celestial Council is going to be very confused. That's probably accurate. Ileana agreed, as alarms began to sound throughout the palace magical sensors, detecting the princes. Awakening Nox extended his hand to the human girl who'd accomplished the impossible through sheer, mundane audacity. Come, let's go disappoint some very powerful people who overthought this situation. Ileana took his hand, grinning despite herself. Maybe being human ordinary, magicless and blunt wasn't such a disadvantage after all. Sometimes the universe didn't need more magic. Sometimes it just needed someone to say, get up, lazy.